Hello everyone, this is your friend Sai Yan Nexus Audio Fanfic and we are back in new fanfic. What if Mr. Satan's lie was finally exposed, and Videl lost everything? Part 1. The day started off like any other. Birds were singing. The sun slowly appearing over the horizon, a cool breeze sifting through the windows, yet, for Videl Satan, it was likely to be anything but a normal day, for she had just stirred from her slumber and looked about the room, getting her bearings as she sat up in her bed and looked over to her dresser and the mirror atop of it, then looked over to her walk-in cupboard and then to her ensuite bathroom. At least she would have had she been sleeping in her own bed, never mind her own house. Everything had changed for Videl and her father, Hercule, in the last 24 hours, after it got out that Mr. Satan was not the champion who defeated Cell after all, and, as a kicker, he was just beaten by a scrawny-looking woman in the last 16 of the World Martial Arts Tournament not just a few days ago. Neither of them knew who had provided the evidence, but there was video footage circulating around all the news and media outlets, showing Mr. Satan cowering behind a rock with the first camera crew who had gotten there, whilst the delivery boy that everyone in the world had seen in the original broadcast, and his friends, had truly been the ones to take down Cell. Now, because of all of this, Videl was waking up in a small bedroom at an inn, in the furthest most reaches of the land, and why? Well, that was simple. Once Mr. Satan lost to the blonde-haired woman, people started questioning just how strong the champ really was. Then the footage was aired and the world had decided that Mr. Satan was nothing but a fraud. Videl had lost her position on the Satan City Police Force, even though she had been innocent in all of this, as they thought that there was no way she didn't know about this, which meant that the city's trust in her too was lost. The city decided that it was going to change its name back to Orange Star City as soon as they could pass the motion in office. Which would take some time but should be fairly straightforward. Given from every individual person, to cities, to even world governments, wanted their money back from Mr. Satan that they had gave. Mr. Satan had received many gifts. There wasn't as much cash as they would like, as most of the monetary gifts were invested into other enterprises, such as hotels, fast food outlets, dojos. Being the case, debt collectors and repossession agencies had swarmed all the hotels, dojos and fast food outlets, and seizing to top it all off, they then descended upon the mansion, taking everything that they could. Videl had at least had the sense to grab everything that she could. She had filled up a suitcase by throwing as many clothes, shoes and underwear that she could fit in it, not to mention, filling up every nook and cranny with things like a toothbrush and toothpaste, money, literally anything she could lay her hands. Father, on the other hand, was trying his best to convince them all to not take anything, but failing. She had taken a precaution and had already packed a suitcase for her father the night before, stuffing as much money and clothes as she could get into it for him. She had thrown everything into her jet copter and capsulized it, making it easier to had done the same with food, grabbing as much food as she could and placing it onto a dining room table before capsulizing it as well. She seemed to have been much more realistic than her father when she had mentioned to him that they should start packing stuff in the event that something like this might. However, laughed it off and thought that his reputation was so great that the people of the world couldn't live without him. Oh, how wrong he was. So, instead of the dresser, closet and bathroom she was expecting, she could see 4 log walls, a door, 2 suitcases and a bedside table which sat between the bed she had slept in and the bed that her father was still sleeping in. Bathroom. The realization of the situation had sunk in hard now. Even though she had been preparing for it, it still hit her like a brick wall, harder than she had got out of bed and tiptoed her way to the door and creaked it open, looking over to her father, who was still fast asleep. As she slid out of the room and closed the door, made her way down the hall to the bathroom, as, unfortunately, due to the size of the inn, it was a shared bathroom between occupants. Videl went about doing her business and made her way back up to the room that they were staying, crept back in. Her father still asleep, and made her way back to her, grabbed some clothes out of a backpack she had also managed to secure on their way out of the mansion, and got changed under the covers. Certain her father would not she had changed, she stuffed the other clothes back into the backpack and placed it on the floor, and grabbed her shoes and again tiptoed out of the she had went out of the room. She made her way downstairs to the reception area, which nobody was manning at the time, seeing as they were the only guests staying there. There didn't seem to be a need for anyone to be manning it this early. She looked at a table, which seemed to have a wooden box which was holding brochures. The kind you find at most hotels that show all the different touristy things you can do in the. Looked at them all. More or less each one was showing something that revolved around going to Satan City, or Orange Star City. Once they changed its was either that or East City, as there wasn't anything else nearby, and East City wasn't exactly close either. Truth be, Videl found a brochure that showed a map of the area surrounding Mt. Pauzu all the way to the coastline and all the way to Satan is what she needed, as neither her, nor her father, knew anything other than city life, as they didn't stop at small towns or villages often. They either lived their lives in Satan City or attended fancy soirees in one of the other big cities for the most part. Videl put the brochure in her pocket and made her way outside. There she could feel the cool, crisp, clean air as she took in a big breath through her. Should have been satisfying to breathe air like this. Although uncertainty stood in her way, not knowing what the day would bring or where they would go, place was really only meant as a rest stop for anyone really, seeing as it had no amenities and they didn't have enough money to be living out of inns and motels the rest of their. Needed a plan. What that might be, however, was anyone's guess, as her father didn't really say much for the rest of the day after they fled their home in Videls. Couldn't even rely on that too much either, as they would need to refuel at some point, and again, money would only go so far. Videl looked at the map on the brochure and studied it for a while as she sat down on an old tree stump outside at all the towns and villages in the area. She couldn't decide where to go. After all, most of these places had TV now, so it was most likely that they all knew about what had happened. Were only lucky that this place had no TV or news coming that way often, but it wouldn't last forever. The owner would eventually go to get supplies from a nearby town or village and would find out from someone. Best Videl could hope for is that someone would take pity on them and offer to put them up for some time. Her best friend, Arasa, had offered to take her in, but Videl had declined, as Arasa's parents were okay with Videl staying. But not her father, and Videl loved her father very much, that she wouldn't abandon him in his hour of need. Hence, Videl took her father in the jetcopter in any direction that wasn't Satan. Kept in contact with Arasa for as long as she could. However, her phone battery eventually ran out, and, with no electrical supply at the inn to recharge it, it was no longer a useful item, though she didn't discard it as she would likely find a way to charge it later. After studying the map some more, Videl heard the door to the inn open, turned around to see the sight of her slightly disheveled father, clearly just awaken out of bed. "Hi sweetie, what are ya doing?" asked Hercule. "Sigh. Just looking at a map of the area, trying to figure out our next step in this whole mess," replied Videl. "TV family-oriented shows. Oh, I see," said Hercule as he looked down at the ground in shame. "Videl, I'm sorry this happened to you. I only wanted the best for you," said Hercule ashamedly. "I know, Dad, I know, but we need to concentrate on what we're going to do next. We'll have plenty of time to discuss this later, okay?" said Videl. "Okay, sweetie," replied Hercule. After a while of contemplating, Videl suggested that they head somewhere over in the direction of Mt. Pauzu's base, as there were a number of villages there that she hoped hadn't heard the news. Not knowing what else to do, agreed with his daughter and stepped back into the inn with Videl behind him as they made their way back up to their room and gathered their things. After stopping to grab some breakfast in the small dining area of the inn, they began their trek towards Mt. So often, they'd pass by someone who was on their way to their work or running errands. All friendly enough, it seemed as though maybe news hadn't reached out here quite It became evident after a while that news had reached out there and that, maybe the first few people they came across were just really friendly, as soon after the first few passers-by, they began approaching a village, where the more people they passed, the more vulgar and annoyed people were shouting at them, booing them, calling them worthless and everything else under the sun. Videl was brushing it off and continued to make her way through the village with her father close leased. She would like to have brushed every comment off, but in fact, the opposite was happening. She was hearing every one of them and couldn't help but notice the anger that seethed in each person who made a rude gesture or comment towards hurt Videl, deep, seeing just how a person could turn on another like that. The two of them dared not stay in the village any longer than they had to, and in fact, didn't even stop in a shop for fear that anything could happen. They just continued until they had managed to walk right out the other end of the wood. End up being a recurring theme. They'd find a village, be jeered or booed, and would have to make a hasty exit and move on to the lasted for a total of 5 days straight, and they ended up having to go away from Mt. Pauzu and towards the coastline after only 2 days. They had not been successful in staying anywhere over those 5 nights and ended up camping out. Each of them had bathed properly in days. Their clean clothes were starting to dwindle and they weren't eating properly as they had already rationed out the food to the point that they were going to have to eat every second day just to make it. Nerves were frayed as she was now constantly looking over her shoulder. Not knowing what to was a shadow of his former self, no longer trying to be a heroic leader but instead, following his daughter around as she seemed to have a better grasp of the situation than he did. But, she was still just a kid and didn't know everything. She was just winging it and planning as far ahead as she could, which, admittedly, wasn't very far seeing as she had no idea where they could go. Eventually, after another 4 days of traveling, they happened upon a small appeared to be quite quiet at this hour, not filling any of their hopes that there would be anything open at this. 2 of them made their way through the town, checking each shop, only to find closed signs everywhere. Videl, I don't know if I can take this much more. I'm starving, dirty, stinking and tired, said Hercule to his daughter. TV family-oriented shows. I know, Dad, but what other choice do we have? We have to keep moving, she wearily replied. Just as they were about to give up, they had seen a shop which still appeared to be of their faces lit up. Until they approached the shop, they both became serious for a moment and looked around to see if there was anyone watching. Apparently, they had also become paranoid. On top of everything, they both decided to walk into the shop where they were greeted by an elderly man. Well, there's a surprise. I don't usually get many customers after 8 p.m. What can I do for you? Asked Mr. Lau. Hi there. We're looking to buy food. Any food really, said Videl. Well, we've got some fresh fruit and veg over there, some bread, cheese, said Mr. Lau. Great, said Videl as she helped herself to some of each. Eventually, she placed all the items on the counter which Mr. Lau added up. Okay, that will be 500 zeni please, said Mr. Lau. Videl reached into her pocket and started counting out their money, realizing that they did not have enough. They were short by about 200 zeni. I'm afraid I don't have enough, said Videl dishearteningly. Well, if we take away the bread and cheese, you'll have enough for the fruit and veg, said Mr. Lau. A disappointed Videl eventually put the food back and paid for what they could. They were properly broke as that was the last of their money. They wouldn't even be able to afford to stay at another inn or motel. Excuse me, said Videl. Yes, what is it? Asked Mr. Lau. Do you know if there is anywhere we could stay the night? Asked Videl. Well, I'm not sure there's anywhere in the village that would take you in. After all, the news does get out here too, you know, said Mr. Lau. Oh, I see, replied a defeated Videl. I would offer to take you in myself. Cammy knows you really need it based on the way you both look. However, I live here with my granddaughter, Lime, and we just don't have the space, or beds, to put you up, I'm afraid, said a saddened Mr. Lau. It's okay. Thanks anyway though, said Videl. The two of them made their way for the exit before Mr. Lau spoke up. There is perhaps somewhere you could stay, however, you won't be able to get there tonight, said Mr. Lau. And where is that? Asked Videl. Here, I'll show you, said Mr. Lau as he ushered them both out of the door. You see that clearing, in the middle of all of that dense forest over there, said Mr. Lau, pointing out past the town limits. Yeah, they both replied. If you make your way towards there is a kind-hearted family who I'm sure will be able to help you somehow, said Mr. Lau. Thank you, said Videl, with a slightly renewed hope. Videl and Hercule made their way towards the clearing that Mr. Lau had pointed out to them. Although it was rather late and they needed shelter for they kept walking, looking for anything that might provide even the most basic form of shelter, eventually happening upon what looked like a cave. Pulled out a flashlight she had managed to bring with her when she was packing and realized that this cave was really only an inlet of a hillside. Still, it went in about 10 feet and was large enough for both of them to huddle into for the night. TV family-oriented shows. They tried to make a fire but with little success as it began to rain and they could not bring it inside their shelter for fear of smoking. Themselves had to make do with the shelter they had, which was keeping them dry, but the wind was getting in and out very easily, making it a cold. Persevered and put on extra clothes and used others as makeshift blankets to keep them warm for the night. The next day, the rain had thankfully stopped and they packed up their stuff and continued their way towards for them. The path that they were taking had been blocked as the rain on the previous night had created a few landslides, taking some of the hillside and trees with meant that they had to take a longer route, going around a small mountain in the area, which was going to add days onto their journey, days which they might not have, based on the food and supplies that they had left. It took them another 8 days to go around the blocked road, 4 days to travel around it, which ordinarily would have only took 2. But there were some setbacks for the pair, including a scuffle in which both Videl and Hercule had to fight their way out. Scuffle that they had was a lot more difficult than it should have been for them both, due to their malnourishment and general tiredness. Discover more. Language resources, beds, apparel. After the 4 days of traveling, they had asked someone for directions, who pointed them the wrong way. On purpose, meaning that they lost a day's worth of travel time and had to double back as the last 2 days were spent trying to avoid people. It had become clear to them that nowhere was safe for them now, as just about every living thing that came near them wanted rid of them. Our long journey was taking its toll on both of them as they had both lost weight, and it showed on Hercule more so, due to his bigger muscle mass. Even Videl was starting to look too thin, and she was relatively thin before this. Had all wasn't just the physical tolls that could be seen either, even the mental, emotional and psychological ones could be seen now, as every sound made in the woods had Videl turning around, afraid of what might be there. Hercule, on the other hand, wasn't worried about the sounds that could be heard. He was more worried about anyone that they encountered. He no longer felt like he could beat a single person away if his life depended on it, never mind any kind of mobs that they might run in. Didn't really worry about that too much, as she was doing everything she could to keep them from running into more people, but whenever they stopped to rest for the night, she would look up to the stars, wishing for things to be better, and had cried to herself each night for the last 5 nights now, wondering just how they had gotten into this situation. It had now been 19 days since they had fled their home, almost 3 weeks, and they had run out of money and food, and all their clean clothes had been used. Had tried washing them in streams and even a river, but with nothing to clean them properly. They were basically getting their clothes soaked in cold water and waiting for them to dry, which didn't help when they wanted to press on, as they couldn't go anywhere until their clothes had dried, which took some time. They weren't too far from the clearing that Mr. Lau had pointed them towards. At least, they thought they weren't far. Truth be told, they weren't really sure anymore, since they had to go around the path that was blocked and the map they had didn't show any of the smaller trails, so they were guessing where they were, based on previous happened upon a small house, nestled very close to the edge of the forest trail that they were about to leave and into was about to continue towards the house, when her father tugged on her arm and brought her to a halt. Hold on a minute, Videl. I don't know if this is such a good idea. We've not had the best of luck with people out here, said Hercule. What are you talking about, Dad? We need to at least try, said Videl. Hear me out, Videl. If we go up to that house and they turn us away, we'll leave with nothing, but look on the picnic table at their back door, said Hercule. TV family-oriented shows. Yeah, what about it? Asked Videl. Well, there's food there on the I don't like this idea any more than you do, sweetie, but, said Hercule before he was cut off. What? Are you saying we should steal it? Exclaimed Videl. Unfortunately, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, replied Hercule. No, Dad, we can't steal from these people, said Videl, ashamed her father would even suggest such a thing. Videl, sweetie, I don't think we can rely on people's good nature anymore. Where has it gotten us over the last 3 weeks? Not very far, and we need to be able to survive too, said Hercule. I don't know what to say, said Videl. You don't need to say anything, sweetie. All you need to do is sneak on over to that table and take what you can before anyone inside notices it's missing, said Hercule. What? Why me? Protested Videl. Well, you're smaller than me for a start. That makes it easier for you to hide behind things and less conspicuous that I am, said Hercule. Dad, pleaded Videl. I know, sweetie, I know, of all the people in the world, we shouldn't be stealing from anyone, but desperate times call for desperate measures, said Hercule. Okay, Dad, I'll try, but I want you to know how much I'm against this, said Videl, with a scowl across her face. I know how much it means to you to be on the side of justice and right, and how difficult it must be to even consider stealing from another, let alone actually doing about this, when, not if, but when we win back the trust of the people and get our wealth back, we do something nice for these people, asked Hercule. Really? You promise, Dad? Asked Videl in a softer tone. I promise, Videl, said her father. Okay, Dad, I'll do it, and I'm going to hold you to that promise, said Videl. After the conversation, she made her way behind the trees and bushes to the side of the weren't any windows on the side that she was approaching, which made it slightly scanned around the home and had seen no movement, and crept along the side of the home, looking into a nearby window as carefully as she could see no movement. It appeared to be a kitchen she was looking into. After a moment of pondering, she looked back at the appeared as if someone was preparing a family meal. There was plenty of food just laying. Took another look into the window and still could see nothing, so she turned her attention to the table. On the table was a plethora of foods, each one gazing back at Videl as she gazed at, was even drooling at the thought of eating all this food. However, she regained her composure and decided to pick a few items, not too many, from the table. Before checking the window, couldn't see anyone, but had heard a door inside the house darted back around the side of the home and back into the bushes, and seemed like Videl had managed to get away with it. Food. She had returned to her father's side, viewing the home from a distance through the had managed to sneak away with some rice cakes, some sushi rolls, some rice balls, and a small bowl of was all she was able to grab before she had heard the noise inside. The of noises, they could both hear the man who had came back out the house exclaim that he was certain he had more food laid out for lunch before heading back inside, declaring that he would just have to make more. Videl and her father then moved off back down the path they had came from, just enough to be out of sight of the home, and began to eat their quarry. It's not much, but it'll do for now, stated Hercule. I'd rather not do that again, said Videl. Why not? Look at what it got us. We'll not be starving all day today, said Hercule. It just felt so wrong, Dad. We're supposed to protect citizens from people like us, said Videl, realizing that she was now basically just a common criminal. I know it was wrong, Videl, but what other choice did we have? If we had been nice and asked them, it could have blown up in our faces, said Hercule. Yeah, I know and I get that, Dad, but we didn't give them a chance, we just took from them without even asking, replied Videl. I get it, Videl, but I just can't take that chance, not when I've got to look out for both me and you, he said, now starting to show some emotion in his truth. It was more her who was looking out for him than the other way around. Look, Dad, I know we're doing things that are completely weird for us and that, sometimes, we're gonna have to do things we don't want to, so can we please try and not break the law, she said. All right, Videl. Next time, we'll try it your way, hopefully our luck will change shortly, he replied. With the conversation over, the two decided that it would be best to not take the path by the home, but instead, go around, using the trees for cover, until they were on the other side of the didn't believe this to be the clearing that they were directed towards, as it was too small, compared to the area that Mr. Lau had pointed them towards. They continued onwards until it was dark and once again, had to seek shelter for the time. They found a rock formation which gave them partial shelter. It wouldn't keep them dry had it decided to rain that night. Luckily for them, it didn't. Were even able to make a campfire to keep them warm, something that they had been lacking for some time now, due to the rain that had fallen over a week ago, making a lot of the potential firewood in the area unusable. Again, that night, Videl looked up to the sky as her father slept, wondering what the next day would bring. Was starting to lose hope. They'd been walking for a few weeks now and their luck had really only gotten worse, with the odd bright moment here and there. Maybe tomorrow will bring something new for them. 3 more days had passed and it seemed like their journey would never end. The torment that the pair had gone through had drained them so much that they went back on their word about not breaking the law. They had passed by a number of homes and small villages on their way to this clearing and, when they could, would pinch small items. Normally it would be food that they would take over anything else. The two of them felt incredibly guilty at what they were doing, but they needed to in order to survive, since they had tried it Videl's way after their discussion previously, and it turned out to that they almost had both their skulls bashed in by a baseball bat wielding nutcase. They had managed to make it through the forest into another clearing. This time, based on the size of the clearing, they believed that they were in the right place. However, they still had a bit to walk as the home appeared to be somewhere on the edge of the forest at the other side. They didn't get very far though, as they had come upon a group of people who were just loitering about, clearly with nothing better to do than to cause trouble for the two. Hey, take a look guys, it's Mr. Liar and his daughter, said one of the young men. The group turned around to see them, whilst Videl and Hercule stopped in their tracks, apprehensive of the group in front of them. There were 7 young men in total, all of whom either straightened up or began walking slowly in the direction of the pair. Well, what do we have here boys? Fresh meat, said another. Yeah, and look at the girl, she looks pretty feisty, I wouldn't mind taking her for a spin, if ya know what I mean, said the young man who noticed them approaching. Now Videl was worried for a different reason. Surely, they didn't just suggest some sort of lewd act now, did they? Hercule was enraged with the comment. Hey, how dare you talk about my daughter like that, you scumbag, yelled Hercule. Oh, and what are you going to do about it? From what we hear, you're not all that tough like you claim to be, old man, said the second young man. They were right. Whilst Hercule was still a strong man, due to his tiredness and lack of food, etc., he wasn't as strong as he was. He probably could fight them all off if he really tried, but he was no longer sure of himself after everything they had been through. The group began to crowd around the pair and one of them grabbed Videl by the arm. Hey, let go of me, cried Videl. Hey, get your hands off of her now, yelled an angered Hercule. However, he wasn't able to do much about it as 4 of the young men had grabbed at Hercule to make sure he didn't interfere. Videl tried to get free as well, but she struggled as one of the other men had grabbed her and now, she had 2 men holding her, one at each side. First, I think we'll beat the crap out of her dad, for lying to the world about Cell. Then, we'll all take our turns and have our fun with you, said the only guy who wasn't holding on to anyone. Vidal's heart sank and began to beat faster. She could feel it in her chest, bouncing around. True panic had set in at the very notion of what they were suggesting. For the first time in Vidal's life, she was the one in danger and needed someone else's help. She cried out for help. TV family-oriented shows. No, please, don't, help. Someone please, help, cried Vidal, tears now gathering in her eyes and rolling down her cheeks as she tried harder to break free. It's no use, you're out in the middle of nowhere, nobody's going to come running to your rescue, said the young man. Just then, something hit him in the back of the head. Ow, what the hell was that for? He said, turning to the group who were holding Hercule, assuming it to be one of them. It wasn't us, replied one of them. Hey, get away from them now, came a voice from behind the whole group. What the? Said one of them holding Hercule, as they all turned to see where the voice had come from. How dare you harm them? Get away from them this instant, shouted a woman, who had her young son in tow. Get lost and mind your own business, lady, before we decide to turn our attention to you, replied one of them. She turned to her son. Go teach them a lesson, she said to her son. The young boy flew towards them in a blur and immediately took down the one who was free from holding either Vidal or Hercule. He threw a punch straight into the young man's torso and he was flung back a good 20 feet. The rest of the group turned in amazement at what they had just seen before one of the two holding Vidal piped up. Hey, what's the big idea? Come on, Puck, let's get. I am, said one of the men holding Vidal. Right with ya, Petty, replied Puck. The two men charged at the young boy and attempted to tackle him, but when they dove at him, they both hit the ground, with the young boy gone. In fact, the young boy was so quick, he was now behind the two men. What? How did he get there? Said Petty. Puck didn't have time to answer as the young boy launched a fierce blow straight to Puck's face and a kick to Petey's stomach area, sending both men crashing to the ground and knocked out. The other four had seen this and decided that they didn't need to be holding Hercule, but in fact, they needed to concentrate on this kid. They all let Hercule go and made their way, cautiously, towards the young boy. Vidal, meanwhile, ran around them and back into her father's arms as they huddled together for their own protection. All right, you asked for it, kid, said one of the remaining men. Each of the men took it in turn to try and attack the young child, but every one of them met with failure. They all were either punched or kicked and sent in all directions. One of them just straight up fell on their back after a square punch to the jaw, another was sent careening into a tree. One was sent a good 50 feet further up the path and the last somehow managed to end up lodged in a tree's branches. Vidal and Hercule were in shock, both at the troubling ordeal that they just faced, but also at the incredible skills and strength that this kid just displayed. It seemed a lot better than anything that they could both do. The young boy walked back towards them, as his mother approached them from the other side. Are you two all right? Said the woman. Why, I think so, I'm just a little shaken, as all, replied Vidal. Thank you, said Hercule. The woman then looked at Hercule and Vidal and for the first time during the whole encounter, recognizing who it was that her son had just saved. Oh, it's you, said the woman with a stern look on her face. Vidal and Hercule could only reply with a scared look on their faces. I'm sorry, piped up Vidal. The woman was taken aback by the words she used. Whatever for, dear? Asked the woman. I dunno. Just, everywhere we go, people are shouting at us, telling us to get lost and chasing us and, said Vidal, but she couldn't say any more as her throat closed, choking on the words that she was trying to say. The woman watched as the girl sobbed, thinking just how awful the two of them must have had it since the announcement about Mr. Satan and the Cell Games, as well as the World Martial Arts Tournament. Judging by the look of you both, I'd say neither of you have been eating much, have you? The woman asked. Both Videl and Hercule shook their heads at the woman as they were sat on the ground, huddled together. Please, come with us and we'll get you something to eat, she said. Really? You mean it? Asked Hercule. Of course, what kind of a mother would I be if didn't teach my son kindness to others, she said, looking at her son as the young boy joined her at her side. Thank you, said Videl, finding her voice again. You're welcome. I'm just sorry that the rest of the world can't find forgiveness in their hearts for you, she replied. The four of them then started towards the other side of the clearing. The walk took approximately 10 minutes for them to arrive at the home, where the woman invited Videl and Hercule in and ushered them towards the kitchen table. So, how did you manage to end up all the way out here? Asked the woman. Well, obviously you know who we are and what our story is, said Videl, albeit a bit meekly. We were having everything taken from us, we had to get out before everything was took, so we grabbed what we could and flew off in my jetcopter in any direction, just to get away from it all, she continued. Videl went on to explain their travels over the last few weeks and what ordeals that they had gone through to get there. And then, that horrible incident back there, said Videl, trying not to get too emotional over the thought of what those guys would have done. Well, don't you worry now, you'll be safe with us, said the woman. Thank you. However can we repay you? I don't suppose my autograph holds weight anymore, does it? Asked Mr. Satan. No, it doesn't, and even if it did, we wouldn't really have wanted it anyway, no offense, said the woman. Also, we wouldn't want anything from you, we're dedicated to helping other people in this household if you go by the actions of my husband and my other son, she continued. Oh, you have another son, and a husband? Asked Videl. Yes, actually, my son is about your age, she said. Mom, he's home, Big Brother is home, shouted the excitable young boy. Oh, apparently he's here now, you'll get to meet him in just a moment, said the woman. Oh, that would be wonderful. Actually, while I remember, we didn't ask you for your name, said Videl. Oh my, where are my manners? My name is Sun Chi-Chi, but please, call me Chi-Chi, she said. And that young child who's going crazy for his brother to come in is my son, Godin, she continued. Pleased to meet you Chi-Chi, said Videl. Likewise, said Hercule. Although, I feel as if I've heard those names somewhere before, said a puzzled Videl. Mom, I'm home, came a new voice as it entered the household. I'm in the kitchen, sweetie, and we have some guests, replied Chi-Chi. Videl recognized that voice, she hadn't heard it in a number of weeks. It was a voice that she was acquainted with, yet was not overly familiar with, it sounded like TV family-oriented shows. Gohan, said Videl, upon hearing the young Saiyan's voice. Gohan rounded the corner into the kitchen. Hey mom, I'm back from show, said Gohan, as his words drifted off when he realized who was in his kitchen. Videl spun around in her chair and looked up to see Gohan standing in the doorway. Gohan, came the quizzical voice again. Videl, what are you doing here? Asked Gohan, confused as to why Videl and Mr. Satan were in his kitchen. Videl said nothing else but instead, she got up out of her chair and walked over to Gohan and wrapped her arms around his torso and gave him a very heartfelt and warm hug. It's so good to see a friendly face again, said the young woman, starting to tear up. Yeah, it's nice to see you too, Videl, said a still confused Gohan. You know him? Asked Hercule. Yeah, sniff, we go to school together, Videl answered. Oh, well that makes sense, said Chi-Chi. So, what exactly are you doing here? Asked Gohan. You might want to sit down for that story, sweetie, it'll take a while to explain. In the meantime, you can both stay for dinner, said Chi-Chi. Really? Asked Hercule. Of course, like I said earlier, I've got to teach my son kindness, said Chi-Chi, referring to Goten as she knew Gohan's heart was filled purely with kindness, like his father's. Thank you. You're awfully generous, replied Hercule. Don't mention it. Now, the next question is, how do you two intend to get back on your feet? Asked Chi-Chi as Videl took her seat and Gohan and Goten joined them at the table. To tell you the truth, I don't really know the answer to that, admitted Hercule. It probably doesn't help that everyone in the world knows who you are either, replied Chi-Chi. No, it doesn't, said a dejected Videl. Hey, don't be sad, you've made it here, that's a step in the right direction, isn't it? Asked Gohan. Videl looked up at Gohan and stared for a moment, before a smile crept up on her face. Yeah, it is, she replied. Gohan then turned to Chi-Chi. Hey mom, can I talk to you for a moment, in private? Asked Gohan. Sure. Just a moment, dear. Goten, you go outside and play, okay, said Chi-Chi. Okay mom. Big brother, will you come play with me? Asked Goten. Sure, I'll be out shortly, squirt, replied Gohan as he roughed up his brother's hair. Goten then made his way outside whilst Chi-Chi motioned for Videl and Hercule to follow her through to the front room. Here, make yourselves comfortable just now while I make dinner and go talk to Gohan, said Chi-Chi. As Chi-Chi made her way back to the kitchen, Videl sat on the sofa and Hercule sat in a chair. They both looked at each other for a moment before smiling at each other, realizing just how fortunate that they were to be in a place that they weren't being jeered at or being approached by any untoward persons. Chi-Chi had returned to the kitchen and opened the door to the refrigerator and pulled out a jug of orange juice and began to pour it into some glasses. So Gohan, what was it you wanted to talk to me about? Asked Chi-Chi. Well mom, I think it's great that you've given them somewhere to go, but what about after you've fed them? Will they be staying the night? Asked Gohan. Oh gosh, I didn't think about that, I only wanted to get them out of the trouble they were in earlier and then to feed them as they look starved, replied Chi-Chi. Oh yeah, we kinda got sidetracked, didn't we? I'll go ask Videl for the whole story in a minute, but what about them? Where are they going to go? Asked Gohan. I don't know Gohan, but I get the feeling that they'll probably end up staying here for a while, said Chi-Chi. Really mom? Said Gohan. Well, I mean, it's not like they can really go anywhere else, besides, we are kinda responsible for the situation they're in now, right? Said Chi-Chi. Oh, I never thought of it like that mom, replied Gohan. They of course, both knew what Chi-Chi meant by that. If Hercule had never taken the credit for defeating Cell, then the truth would never have come out the way it did and Videl and Mr. Satan wouldn't be sitting in their front room. Although, Gohan did think, if Mr. Satan hadn't taken the credit, then Videl could possibly have lived a different life altogether. Here Gohan, take these through to them as well, said Chi-Chi, handing her son 2 glasses of orange juice. Sure thing, mom, said Gohan. Gohan took the 2 glasses from her and made his way into the front room, where he found Videl and Mr. Satan, both napping. Wow, they must have been exhausted, I guess I'll just leave the glasses with them, he thought to himself. He placed one glass on a table next to Mr. Satan and then placed the other on a table next to the sofa where Videl was sleeping. He looked at Videl and noticed how peaceful she was. Gohan didn't really know much about Videl. Sure, he had been going to the same school as her for a few months now, and was even in the same class, but they never really interacted. He would always be talking to her friend, Arasa, or rather, it would be the other way around, she would be talking to him. This was really the only time that he and Videl chatted, and it didn't really happen that often. Gohan had always seemed to get the impression that Videl either wasn't interested in gaining a new friend, just didn't care or didn't trust him, so it was surprising when she just got up and hugged him tightly. He made his way back to the kitchen. Well, it looks like they're all tuckered out, they're both sleeping, said Gohan to his mother. Poor things, I can't imagine what they've had to go through these last few weeks, said Chi-Chi. So, what's the plan for after dinner then, Mom? Asked Gohan. Okay, here's what we'll do. They can stay tonight and we'll discuss with them in the morning about what they plan on doing going forward, then we can see what we can possibly help them out with, said Chi-Chi. Great idea, Mom, replied Gohan. So, this is the sleeping arrangement for tonight. Goten will sleep in my room, you'll sleep in your room, Videl will sleep in Goten's room, and I'm afraid poor Mr. Satan will have to sleep on the sofa. It's not perfect, but that way, everyone gets somewhere to sleep, said Chi-Chi. Right, he said. Videl and Hercule both slept for about an hour before Videl first woke up. She looked around her surroundings and was confused at first, before she remembered what had happened earlier in the day and that, by some happenstance, she was now inside Gohan's home. She looked around the room, seeing a TV, some tables with glasses filled with orange juice, a bookcase, a window, curtains for said window, the sofa she was sitting on, a lamp and a chair, which her father was still napping in. She took a drink of the orange juice first, then she decided to go a wander to the kitchen to see if she could find anyone. She stepped into the kitchen doorway to see Chi-Chi cooking up a storm. Oh, Videl, you're awake, said Chi-Chi. TV family-oriented shows. Yeah, sorry we dozed off, we must have been exhausted, said Videl. It's no problem at all, you've been through a lot, replied Chi-Chi. Videl nodded in agreement. Where's Gohan gone? Asked Videl. He took Goten outside to play with him. We didn't want to disturb you, replied Chi-Chi. Oh, thanks, said Videl smiling. Now, could you go wake your father Videl and I'll get the boys, dinner is just about ready, said Chi-Chi. Okay, replied Videl. Videl woke her father like she was asked and Chi-Chi called outside for the boys to come in. After the boys had arrived back at the Sun home, they all sat down at the kitchen table and began to dig into the dinner that Chi-Chi had made for them all. Wow, Chi-Chi, this is absolutely amazing, said Videl. Yeah, I have to agree, this is the best food I think I've ever had, and that's not the hunger talking, agreed Hercule. Why thank you, said Chi-Chi. Now, continued Chi-Chi, we've decided that for tonight, you'll both spend the night here and then tomorrow, we can talk about what you'll be doing in the future. You mean it? Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, said Hercule. Thank you, Chi-Chi, said Videl, tearing up at the generosity the family was showing her and her father. Well, we couldn't just feed you and then very well throw you out. So, the sleeping arrangement will be this. Goten will sleep in my room with me, Videl, you'll get Goten's room and I'm afraid Mr. Satan that you'll have the couch, said Chi-Chi. That's great, I don't mind the couch, it would just be nice to have a roof over my head for a night, said Hercule. Actually, Mom, we've a spare fold-away bed in the closet, we could set that up and he could have a proper bed, said Gohan. Oh, I had forgotten about that. Well, it looks like you'll get a proper bed after all, said Chi-Chi. You're too kind, replied Hercule. Oh, that reminds me, you both have suitcases there, I assume you have dirty laundry in there? Asked Chi-Chi. Yeah, said both of them quizzically. Well, if you leave them both with me, I'll give them all a wash so that you have something clean to wear, said Chi-Chi. You mean it? Asked Videl. Sure, said Chi-Chi with a smile on her face. We can't thank you enough, said Videl. TV family-oriented shows. Don't mention it. Now, eat up, you'll need to regain your strength, both of you, said Chi-Chi. The group finished their dinners. Chi-Chi began washing both Videl and Hercule's clothes. Hercule went to the front room where he would be sleeping but sat and watched TV with Goten. Gohan took Videl upstairs to show her the room she would be sleeping in that night. Here, this is Goten's room, said Gohan, as he opened up the door and switched on the light. It's very kid-friendly, said Videl, stepping into the room. Well, what do you expect? it's a kid's room, said Gohan with a grin on his face. Yeah, I know that, said Videl. Hey, Gohan, she said. Yeah, what's up? He asked. I've a favor to ask you, she said. Sure. What is it? He asked. Do you think it would be alright if I used your phone, to call Arasa? I haven't spoken to her in weeks, not since my cell died, she said. Gohan began to smile. Of course, Arasa has missed you a lot these last few weeks. In fact, you're all she ever talks about, he said. Really? Asked Videl. Yeah, well, except for when she spots a guy and then kinda zones out for a bit, he replied. Haha, yeah, that sounds like Arasa alright, she said. Gohan, you have a wonderful family here, your generosity is too much, she said emotionally, as tears began to fill her eyes. Hey, don't cry, he said, as he wiped away a tear from Videl's cheek. Of course we would have helped, said Gohan. Videl couldn't help herself and hugged the young Saiyan once again. Gohan, I'm sorry if I've kept my distance from you since you started school this year. I don't mean to come off as cold or unfriendly, it's just, she said. Just, what? He asked. Well, I used to have this weird feeling that you were hiding something and were purposely trying to keep it from the world, but, all I see is the generosity you and your family have, plus, this cozy home, way out in the middle of, where are we exactly? She asked. The 439 mountain area, he replied tentatively. What? We made it that far, but how? That's ages away from the city. Exclaimed Videl. You must have been making good time, I guess, he said. I guess, said Videl, still puzzled. TV family-oriented shows. Anyway, I'm gonna turn in for the night, said Gohan, as he turned and left the room. Oh, and if you need anything, my room is just down the hall and on the right, although be warned, I am a heavy sleeper, he said, grinning and rubbing the back of his head. Videl followed him out of the room and watched him walk down the hallway and open a door on the right, and as he did this, he looked back up the hall to where Videl was standing. He waved to the girl as he entered the room and closed the door behind him. Videl stood there for a moment before deciding that, maybe she too, should turn in for the night, so she turned back into the room and closed the door. She was only in the room for a moment when she could hear Goten and Chi-Chi coming up the stairs and heading to Chi-Chi's room. She assumed her father must have been ready to get some shut-eye as well. Videl removed her shoes and placed them next to the door and then removed her socks and stuffed each sock into the corresponding shoe. It was a bit warm in Goten's room, even with the window open, so Videl decided to remove her t-shirt and shorts and hung them both off a corner of the bed. She thought for a moment about how this would be the first time in weeks that she was going to be sleeping comfortably, inside away from all the elements, and didn't have to worry about whether it was too cold or whether it was going to rain. Add to that, she wouldn't have to worry about gathering firewood and starting a fire, which was always a task in itself, even if she had gotten used to doing it. She got onto the bed and pulled the sheets over her and lay there for a moment, looking up at the ceiling, thankful that she and her father had made it to some sort of safe haven, even if it only lasted for a night. They were both safe and well fed. Their clothes were getting cleaned and they were both able to sleep in a bed for a change. Maybe things were starting to look up. It didn't take long for Videl to drift off, as the number of nights spent grabbing barely enough sleep to function, never mind the sleepless nights, had caught up to her, and soon, she was fast asleep, laying there without a care in the world, waiting for the next morning to start. Gohan woke up that morning, the same as he always does, with his bed sheets entwined in his legs, pillow laying to one side and he, all sprawled out across his bed. He sat up and looked around his surroundings, trying to recompose himself for a moment before getting up and heading for the bathroom. He looked at the clock, which read 7:30 am, which normally would have been a bad thing. However, school was now out for summer. This meant that Gohan would be able to lay in more often for the next month or so, but he was sure his mother would find something for him to do during these weeks off school. He got up from the bed and got changed into some casual clothes, a t-shirt and a pair of sweatpants, and made his way out of his room and into the bathroom. Videl awoke that morning, feeling quite comfy, realizing that she was in a bed and unaware of her surroundings at first. She shot up in bed and looked around the room. She remembered that her and her father were kindly taken in by Gohan's family yesterday and that she was in his brother, Goten's room. Videl looked down and realized that the bed cover was only around her waist. She gasped and pulled it up to her neck level, remembering that she had to clothe the night before. After looking around again and remembering that she had the room to herself, she breathed a sigh of relief and retrieved her shorts and t-shirt from the bed corner. She got dressed and got up out of the bed and exited the room. She looked around, trying to figure out which room was the bathroom, and had spotted Gohan's door was sitting ajar, so she made her way down the hall and peered in. "Gohan?" she asked cautiously, trying to determine if the young man was awake or not. However, when Videl pushed the door open slightly and peered in, she noticed that the bed was empty and realized that Gohan must already be awake. It then dawned on her that she could hear the sound of running water from a room across the hallway. It sounded like Gohan was in the shower. This was fine for her as she now knew where the bathroom was and would go when it was free. She made her way downstairs to see if anyone else was already awake. She peered into the front room as she had gotten to the bottom of the stairs. Her father, Mr. Satan, was still sound asleep on the fold-out bed. Clearly sleep had caught up with him as well. She made her way to the kitchen, where she found Chi-Chi sitting at the table, reading a newspaper and drinking a cup of coffee. "Oh, good morning, Videl," said Chi-Chi as she noticed the young woman enter the kitchen. "Good morning, Chi-Chi," she replied. "How was your night's sleep?" asked Chi-Chi. "Wonderful. I can't remember the last time I slept so well, or so peacefully," she replied. "That's good. It seems your father is still enjoying his sleep," said Chi-Chi. "Hee hee. Yeah," said Videl with a smirk on her face. "So, Chi-Chi, I was wondering about something," Videl started. "Do you have any suggestions for, how me and my dad go about starting a new life?" asked Videl. "Oh, well, to be honest, no, I don't really. At least, not right now," answered Chi-Chi honestly. "Oh, I see, that's okay. I'm sure we'll come up with something," replied Videl, who was not sure herself about what to do. "It's all right, dear, we'll think of something," said Chi-Chi, as she arose from her chair and walked around the table, placing a reassuring hand on Videl's shoulder. "Thanks," said Videl, looking up to Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi then began to make breakfast and poured Videl a glass of juice and sat it on the table for her. Gohan had finished using the bathroom and had made his way downstairs to the kitchen to find Videl and his mother already there. "Morning everyone," he said. "Good morning sweetie," said Chi-Chi. "Morning Gohan," said Videl. "So, how did you sleep last night?" asked Gohan. "It was the best I've had in a long time," she said. "That's great to hear. So what are you gonna do today then?" he asked. "I don't know, to tell you the truth. I mean, we never really had a plan to begin with. It all happened so fast that we didn't have time to think about where we're going, or where we wanted to end up," she replied. "Oh, I see, that must have been terrible, enduring all of that," he said regrettably. "Yeah, it was, but at least we've got a bit of a reprieve here. And thank you again, both of you, for taking us in," she said. "Oh, you can stop with the thanks now, Videl," smiled Chi-Chi. Videl nodded back at the woman. "Well, the first thing I suppose you'll need is to get a permanent roof over your head," said Gohan. "Yeah, well, that's not gonna be easy. We don't have any money left and any money we did have was spent over the last few weeks just trying to survive." And we can't rely on my dad's reputation now, or mine, for that matter, said Videl. So, a job first then, said a puzzled Gohan. Yeah, I guess, but who's going to give us a job? My father is a fraud and I chose to side with him. I couldn't let him go out on his own, he's my dad, she said with a hurt look on her face. I'm sure there would be people willing to give you a job, Videl, after all, you're only his daughter, it's not like you lied about it, you only found out yourself when it was all over the news, he explained. I know Gohan, but some people can't see past that, and that's what makes it difficult, she said. Well then, we'll just have to change their perspective, he said. And how do we do that? She asked. Hee. Well, I haven't quite figured that out yet, he said. Well, that idea lasted long, said Videl, as she folded her arms on the table and rested her chin on her arms. Hey, come on, cheer up, we'll think of something, I know it, said an enthusiastic Gohan. You think so? Asked Videl, looking over to him. I know so, he said. A smile crept across Videl's face. For some reason, she believed him when he said that they'd think of something. He seemed so confident, as if what he said would come true, if only Videl could believe it. However, her recent experiences didn't fill her with as much confidence as the young Saiyan was projecting. She excused herself and went to use the bathroom now that it was free. After she left the room, Gohan turned to his mother and asked a question. Hey Mom, said Gohan in a lowered voice. What is it Gohan? Asked Chi-Chi. Do you think we should tell them about the Cell games, you know, how it really went, after all, like you said, we are kinda, partially, responsible for the situation they're in, he said. Well, I suppose you're right Gohan, in a way, we are responsible. Do you think they can handle it? After all, they might shift the blame onto us and that could lead to some tension, she explained. Yeah, you're right about that. I think we should tell them, maybe just, not right now, he said. Okay, but if you can, try to give me fair warning when you're about to do it, okay son, she said. Will do Mom, he said. Chi-Chi had made breakfast for everyone and had placed it on the kitchen table. Hercule had finally woken up and had joined them whilst Chi-Chi went to wake Goten in order to get him to the table for breakfast, although, once she mentioned food, Goten was wide awake. The five of them sat in silence as they each ate their food, Goten shoveling it in his mouth, like a true Saiyan. Gohan was trying to act polite in front of Videl and Mr. Satan, however, he too was going slightly faster than a normal person would eat food. Videl and Hercule, however, wouldn't have noticed, as they were too busy enjoying their food to really care or notice the others' eating habits. After they had finished, Chi-Chi and Gohan washed up, whilst Goten accompanied Videl and Hercule through to the front room and watched some TV. It was mostly cartoons that were on, but the odd time and again, there would still be a news report about Hercule and Videl. Mostly, these were just to say that they hadn't been seen since the day they had fled, but there had been reports of their sightings in some towns and villages. Anything else was just things like the city trying to get its name changed, which was taking longer, due to political red tape. The two of them looked at each other with puzzling looks, as if to say, how did we get into this, and how do we get out? Gohan came into the room and cleared his throat. So Videl, I was talking to my mom and had an idea, he said. Oh, what's that? Asked Videl. Well, this isn't going to solve any of your immediate problems, but I thought you might want to see other friendly faces, so I asked my mom if it would be alright if I invited Arasa and Sherpner over, but not tell them that you're here, he explained. Really? Gosh, Gohan, that's a really thoughtful idea, said Videl, her face full of joy at the prospect of seeing her friends again for the first time in over a month. It's nothing, I just know I'd want to see a friend in times of uncertainty. I'll go give them a call and see if they'll come over, he said. Hercule had seen the joy in his daughter's face at the prospect of her seeing her friends. He felt guilty for having dragged his daughter into all of this. Even though she chose to go with him, he should have been forceful and told her to stay at her friends. After all, the incident yesterday could have turned out worse than it did, had it not been for these friendly people coming along when they did. Hercule excused himself to go to the bathroom, but in actuality, he had followed Gohan into the hallway, where he had just finished the phone call to Arasa. Hey, Gohan, said Hercule. Oh, Mr. Satan, can I help you with something? Asked Gohan. I just wanted to say, I appreciate what you're doing for my daughter. I haven't seen her smile so much in a long time, said Hercule, humbly. Oh, it's nothing, Mr. Satan, I just thought it would be a nice thing to do, replied Gohan. Don't be so modest. If it brings happiness to my Videl, then it brings happiness to me. Please, keep her company, do what you have to make sure she stays happy, please. Pleaded Hercule. Okay, Mr. Satan, I'll try, replied Gohan. Thank you. Oh, and please, just call me Hercule, he replied. Oh, okay, Hercule, said Gohan. Hercule then went to the bathroom as Gohan returned to the front room. Good news, Videl. Arasa and Sherpner are both coming over, he announced. Really? Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, Gohan, she screamed as she ran over to him and hurled herself at him, hugging him tightly. Videl, calm down, would you, said Gohan. How can I calm down? I'm just so excited and it's all thanks to you, she said excitedly, not relinquishing the grip she had on him. Eventually, Gohan embraced her hug and wrapped his arms around her, hugging her. After a minute of Videl not letting go, she finally released her grasp on him and looked up at him. Tears of happiness had been flowing from her eyes. Gohan had seen this and had picked up some tissues from the table and gave them to her. She wiped away her tears and smiled at Gohan. Chi-Chi then entered the room as she had just had another idea which might benefit everyone. I've just thought of something, Videl. Since both you and your father need a permanent roof over your heads, why don't you build a house out here in the forest? Goodness knows there's plenty of trees out here, and the boys can help you and your father build it, she explained. That's not a bad idea, at least we'd have somewhere to stay, replied Videl. What's that? Said Hercule as he came back into the room. Oh, Chi-Chi was saying that we could build a home out here in the forest using its trees, that would give us a place of our own to stay, repeated Videl. That's actually quite a good idea. Sure, it would be a lot different than the old house, but at least it would be ours, said Hercule, as he moved over to Videl and put one of his huge arms around her shoulder and hugged her. Well, if you want, we could get started once Arasa and Sherpner arrive, and Sherpner could help us out too, said Gohan. Yeah, sure, at least it would feel like we're doing something, rather than sitting about and sulking all day, said Videl. Great. We'll wait on them coming over then, said Chi-Chi. A little over an hour had passed and Gohan, Hercule, Videl and Goten were out looking around to try and figure out the best plot of land to start building the new home. To be honest, right next to your home doesn't seem like a bad spot, said Videl. Really? I'd have thought you would want somewhere a little further away, your own space, said Gohan. Well, yeah, but not so far away that we can't see another house, said Videl. Okay, let's look around then, replied Gohan. I'll be honest, I haven't a clue how to judge what is and what isn't a good area to build a home on, admitted Hercule. They had searched for about 30 minutes, but every time a suitable location was found, somebody said no to it, for various different reasons, except for Videl. In fact, she said no to every location that wasn't in direct line of sight to Gohan's home. So, we're right back to where we started, next to our home, said Gohan. As he had finished his sentence, a noise could be heard in the distance. The group looked around to see what it was. Eventually Godin piped up. Hey, look, someone's flying towards us, he said. Videl audibly gasped. That's Arasa. They're here, she squealed. Another minute or so passed by and the jet copter touched down nearby to them. Both Arasa and Scherpner jumped out as Videl ran towards them. Arasa did the same and ran towards Videl once she realized that Videl was even there, with both girls meeting each other halfway before they hugged each other and jumped up and down in joy. Scherpner had capsulized the jet copter and walked up to them. Videl then hugged Scherpner as well, followed by a punch to his arm, before saying hello to both of them properly. Hey, I'm so glad you both made it here, said Videl. Never mind us, what about you? How did you end up here? Are you okay? Are you hurt? Tell us, Videl, what's happened since we last seen each other? Said Arasa, going a million miles a minute. Calm down, Arasa. I'm happy to see you too, she replied, before they both hugged again, their happiness bursting out. Hey Arasa, Scherpner, said Gohan as he joined the three friends. Gohan, how could you keep this from us? Snapped Arasa. It was a surprise, replied Gohan. Next time, Gohan, you tell us if Videl is safe or not. I was very worried, whimpered Arasa. Ah, I'm sorry Arasa, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, he replied. It's okay Gohan, I know you only had good intentions, she replied, a smile now forming on her face. Hey, Scherpner, me and Hercule are going to start on building them a home here, care to help out? Asked Gohan. Sure, it's great seeing you again Videl, said Scherpner as he and Gohan made their way back to Hercule, who was standing near to the house. So, Videl, tell me everything that's happened. Firstly, how long have you been here? Asked Arasa. Well, I was gonna call you last night, but I was so tired, when my head hit the pillow, I was out like a light, replied Videl. Me and Dad only got here yesterday and we stayed the night, she went on to explain. Oh, staying over at a boy's house, and with his mother and your father in the house at the same time, that's terrible Videl, Arasa said, trying to imply a naughty scenario. Really Arasa? Really? After all this time and that's the first thing you say? You haven't changed a bit, said Videl as she smiled at her best friend. Hee hee, and neither have you Videl, I'm glad to see you still have your personality, replied Arasa. But really, tell me what's happened to you, you seem to, without trying to sound catty or anything but, you seem like you've lost a fair bit of weight, pointed out Arasa. Yeah, we haven't been eating very well, but I'm fine now, come on, let's go over to the house and I'll tell you all about it, you can even meet Gohan's mom, she's a lovely person, said Videl. Sure, replied Arasa. Videl walked Arasa into the house and took her through to the kitchen where Chi-Chi was washing dishes. Hey Chi-Chi, this is my friend, Arasa. Arasa, this is Gohan's mom, Chi-Chi, said Videl. A pleasure to meet you ma'am, said Arasa. It's nice to meet you too, but please, call me Chi-Chi, she replied. Here, sit down and let me tell you everything that happened, said Videl. Sure, replied Arasa. Videl went on to explain their travels over the last month, from the day they fled their home, to the inn that they stayed in, to the weeks of travel they had, going from town to town and the reactions that they got from different people, the good ones and the, mostly, bad reactions that they were receiving. Chi-Chi had been in and out of the room a number of times during the conversation, but had joined the rest of the men outside to give them directions in what they should be doing to get the new home built. Videl then explained how they came to stay at Gohan's home, as well as the situation that led them there. Oh no Videl, that's awful, I'm glad his mom and brother came along when they did, I don't even want to think what would have happened to you if they hadn't gotten there when they did, said Arasa. Yeah, I know, but can I tell you something else Arasa? Asked Videl. Sure. What is it? The blonde-haired girl asked. Right now, they're out there, laying the foundations of a home for me and Dad. Before you got here, we were out looking for a place to start building it, and every time someone suggested somewhere, I said no. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the places were wonderful and beautiful, but I didn't want them, explained Videl. Oh, and why's that? Asked Arasa. Well, to tell you the truth, I don't want to be too far away from this house. I want my home to be able to see this one, from wherever it stands, said Videl. Oh, is that just so you can see Gohan? Wink wink, said Arasa jokingly. Well, Videl started, before being cut off. Arasa gasped. Videl, do you have a crush on Gohan? She asked, longing now for an answer. I don't know, it's just, since I've gotten here, for the first time in a while, I've felt safe, ya know, explained Videl. Yeah, I get it, you don't want to leave here cause they make you feel safe, said Arasa. Right, so I don't want to be that far away, in case we need help, said Videl. In all the time I've known you, Videl, I don't think I've even seen you worried about your own safety before. This whole ordeal really has done a number on you, said Arasa, as she looked at her friend with worry. I'll get there, eventually, said Videl. Tell me something then, Videl, said Arasa. What's that? Asked Videl. Just between us two, what do you really think of Gohan? I mean, you never really spoke to him in school and didn't really get to know him at all, said Arasa. Well, he's a really sweet guy, compared to any other guy, to be honest. He's kind, considerate, and he's got quite a hot body, said Videl, wishing now she hadn't added the last part as she began to blush slightly. Arasa squealed in excitement at her friend. Oh, and how exactly do you know that, Miss Perv? Asked Arasa, trying to pry the information out of her friend. When we sat down to breakfast this morning, he was wearing a t-shirt, which was rather tight on him, and you could pretty much see every muscle he had on him. I'm telling you, Arasa, he's more ripped than Scherpner. Heck, just about any guy the first thing I've ever seen, exclaimed Videl. Ah, it sounds like Videl has a crush, said Arasa. What? No, that's not what I said. I mean, sure, he's definitely good looking and he wouldn't hurt a fly, but that doesn't mean I have a crush on him, said Videl, defiantly. Sure, keep telling yourself that, said Arasa with a cheeky grin on her face, to which Videl was not impressed. That's enough of that, shall we go outside to see how they're getting on? Asked Videl. Just so you can see Gohan hard at work, don't you mean? Replied Arasa. Arasa, stop that, said Videl playfully. Gohan, Hercule and Scherpner had started discussing the best way to start the foundations for the home, but couldn't even get it off the ground, so to speak. They discussed the best ways to give it a steady foundation, but they couldn't agree. Eventually, Chi-Chi came outside and told them how to get on with it. 4 huge logs, planted firmly in the ground, then some smaller ones to create a base for them to work on. For Gohan, that wouldn't have been too much of an issue, but they couldn't exactly give the game away in front of Hercule and Scherpner, so they had to do it the old-fashioned way and dig holes. This took way too long for everyone's liking, well, except Gohan. Whilst he too was bored, he was nowhere near out of breath compared to the other two after a few hours. Videl and Arasa had came out to watch them trying to get things underway, whilst chatting to each other about what Videl had missed at school and gossip that, normally, Videl wouldn't have been interested in. Eventually, it was lunchtime and Chi-Chi had prepared food for everyone. Gohan had brought the kitchen table outside as it was a lovely day, the sun shining, a cool breeze in the air and the smell of nature all around them. The 7 of them sat and ate lunch. Goten too, as he was just out playing around whilst most of the work was going on, until there wasn't a bite left to eat. Thank you, Chi-Chi, that was terrific, said Arasa. You're welcome. Once we get cleaned up, how about us girls go shopping? whilst the men try to get some of this done. Chi-Chi asked the two teenagers. Yeah, that sounds great, said Arasa. I'm not so sure, replied a cautious Videl. What's up? Is it cause you think people will recognize you? Asked Arasa. Well, yeah, you haven't seen the way people have treated me these last few weeks, it's just horrible, replied Videl. I think I have an idea, come on, let's head inside. Chi-Chi, could you help me with something? Asked Arasa. Sure, what is it? Asked Chi-Chi. I'll show you inside, come on Videl, said Arasa as she grabbed her friend's hand and bolted inside with her. I wonder what she's planning, probably something Videl will hate, joked Scherpner. Well, what do you say boys, shall we get back to work, said Hercule as the two boys agreed. Are you sure you know what you're doing Arasa, asked Videl. TV family-oriented shows. Yeah I'm sure. My mom let me cut her hair a bunch of times, granted these aren't the proper type of scissors for the job, but they'll work, replied Arasa. The blonde-haired girl was lopping off chunks of Videl's locks, slowly whittling away at the volume of Videl's hair. After about a half hour's worth of clipping, Arasa was finished. Okay Videl, ready to see the new you? Asked Arasa. Videl took in a deep breath before answering. Okay, I'm ready, she replied. Arasa picked up a hand mirror and gave it to Videl, who then held it in front of her and looked at her new hairdo. I love it Arasa, I can't believe that's me, she said. Told ya I knew what I was doing, said Arasa as she winked at Videl. Gee Arasa, I don't know how to thank you for this, said Videl. You don't need to thank me silly, we're best friends, I'd do anything for you, said a heartfelt Arasa. Videl just looked at her friend with a smile and got up and gave her a hug. TV family-oriented shows. Okay, I think we're ready now, wouldn't you say girls, said Chi-Chi. Yeah, both girls replied. They then made their way outside, where the guys were still working. They had made a little headway towards building the house, however, the foundation was far from complete, let alone the rest of the home. Gohan was the first to catch sight of the women as they exited his home. Once he had seen Videl's new look, he was dumbfounded at first, not quite believing that this was the same girl who, not half an hour ago, still had long luscious raven hair. He was trying to contain his awe at her new look. What's wrong Gohan? Like what you see, said a teasing Videl. Gohan snapped back to reality once he realized that she was speaking to him. What? Oh, sorry, I was noticing that you cut your hair, he replied. Really? So, what do you think then? She asked. It looks great, smiled Gohan. Thanks, said Videl, blushing slightly with embarrassment. Whoa, Videl, what happened? Did you get in a fight with a lawnmower? Joked Scherpner. What? How dare you Scherpner? I should clobber you for that, growled Videl. Videl, what have you done to your hair? Said Hercule as he then came over to see what the hold up was with the guys. Well Dad, I needed a way to blend in more and hide my appearance, so, this was the result, explained Videl. Oh, I see, well, it suits you sweetie, said a still flabbergasted Hercule. Thanks Daddy, replied Videl. Alright ladies, let's go, said Chi-Chi. We can take my jet copter, I haven't used it in weeks, said Videl. Well let's go then, shouted an excited Arasa. The girls hopped into Videl's jet copter and took off towards West City, opting to go there as it meant there was a much better chance that Videl would not be known to people. The guys continued with their work, however, Gohan was getting distracted slightly, he couldn't quite get the image of Videl and her new hair cut out of his head. He liked it, not that he disliked her hair before, it just seemed like she was glowing with positivity and confidence, something that she had been lacking a lot of lately and Gohan liked that. Videl, Arasa and Chi-Chi made it to West City and touched down in a densely populated part of the city and hopped out of the jet copter. Once the vehicle was safely back in its capsule, the three women made their way towards the mall in the hopes that they could have a relaxing day. Once inside the mall, they had to decide what they were going to do first, as there was a lot of ground to cover. So, where should we start first? Asked Chi-Chi. I think we should go to the upper floor first and then make our way down, said Arasa. Videl was now looking a bit concerned at going to any of the shops. TV family-oriented shows. What's the matter, Videl? Said Arasa. Well, I was just so excited to be able to go out and just do something normal, that I forgot that I don't actually have any money, said a glum Videl. Don't sweat it, Videl. It's on me today, offered Arasa. Really, Arasa? I can't ask you to pay for me, it wouldn't be right, said a now guilty Videl. Really, Videl? It's no problem, you and your dad done plenty for me for years, it's time I repaid you for a change, said Arasa. Thanks, Arasa, said Videl, her spirits now lifted. The women went to the upper floor and began sifting through the shops, trying on different clothes in each shop, just seeing if there was anything that they liked. Like a lot of different American teen shows, they were trying on all sorts of wacky get-ups that nobody in a million years would wear, and they had fun doing it, which kept Videl in high spirits for the whole day. People and society. Eventually, they had been through a number of clothes shops and bought a number of clothes. Videl had managed to pick up an extra number of t-shirts, some baggy like she normally would have worn, some form-fitting with V-necks, not something she was accustomed to, but they looked nice to her. She also picked up a few pairs of shorts and a few pairs of jeans as well to round out her new wardrobe that she was essentially buying. She even managed to buy new underwear by asking Arasa for money and making that purchase herself, which her friend had obliged to without asking any questions. Arasa had picked up some cute outfits for herself, mostly summer wear like denim shorts and crop tops, as well as a bikini top and bottom as well and a t-shirt or two, mostly for lounging around her home in. Chi-Chi had mostly spent the time picking up things that they needed at home, such as new utensils for the kitchen, some clothes for Godin, new bed sheets, things like these. She had also had the consideration that, since Videl was getting new clothes, Hercule should also get some new clothes. However, she didn't know what size his clothes were and after consulting with Videl, had guessed his size and bought various different clothes in different sizes. She ended up with a few short-sleeved shirts, various types of pants, jeans, sweatpants, etc., and a few pairs of boxers for the man. They had spent a couple of hours in the mall and had been through almost all of the shops, mostly clothes shops, but they also stopped at a nail salon where they all got manicures and pedicures, something that Chi-Chi wasn't accustomed to either. However, she enjoyed the whole experience as much as Videl did. The trio also stopped for coffee and desserts, mainly Videl and Arasa had desserts, and were just about finished their shopping spree when they stopped in one last clothes shop. Hey Videl, tell me something, of all the clothes you brought with you, did you pack any kind of formal wear at all? Asked Chi-Chi. I don't think so, it wasn't really top of my list when I was stuffing things into a suitcase, replied Videl. Well then, let's have a look over here, said Chi-Chi as she urged Videl to follow her. They were looking at different types of dresses, some very glittery silver dresses, some black dresses with the slit in the dress almost waist-high which Videl didn't care for too much, then there were some very wacky dresses which had all sorts of accessories which Videl looked at and pitied whomever had to wear them. Eventually, she spotted something that was a little bit different. It was a red cheongsam an Chinese dress with a golden floral design that ran from the bottom of the dress, which was just below the knees, spiraling all around until it reached the top, just under the neck area. The trim of the dress was also finished with a golden yellow thread to go with the gold floral design. Videl fell in love with the dress and wanted to try it on, to which Chi-Chi and Arasa encouraged her to do so. Whilst Videl went to go change into the dress, Chi-Chi was reminded of her cheongsam. I remember when I used to wear something similar to that, said Chi-Chi. You had one. Nice. What did it look like? Asked Arasa. It was blue and I wore a pair of red pants underneath it, as well as red-colored armbands and shoes to match. Although, I did wear mine more for fighting in than for style, said Chi-Chi. You fought in clothes like that. Why were you fighting in the first place? Asked Arasa. Oh, I used to do martial arts, I even entered the World Martial Arts Tournament once, that's where I met Gohan's father, Goku. I even fought against him, in a losing effort, but ultimately, I won when I married him, said Chi-Chi. Ah, that's so sweet, said Arasa. Just as Arasa had finished speaking, Videl stepped out from the changing room. Okay, how do I look? Asked Videl. Videl now had on this red dress, that went down to just below her knees, with a slit in the dress which, Videl didn't like too much but it allowed her some freedom of movement so it wasn't all bad. The dress was very form-fitting and you could see all of Videl's curves, something that she was always a bit embarrassed about. However, both ladies made sure that Videl had nothing to worry about with regards to that. Videl, exclaimed Arasa, you look amazing, she screeched. Videl, you look like a very elegant young woman, said Chi-Chi. Wow, thanks, I wasn't sure what to think at first, said Videl, twirling in the mirror, but now, I feel like a whole new person. Thanks, both of you for taking me out today, Videl finished. TV family-oriented shows. Of course, what are friends for, said Arasa. Videl dear, if you want to get changed, we'll purchase the dress and then head home, said Chi-Chi. Sure, said a very cheery Videl. Chi-Chi paid for the dress and the three women made their way out of the mall. Once they had gotten to a designated spot for takeoffs in the city, Videl flung her capsule to the ground and watched as it appeared in a puff of smoke. They placed all the shopping into the storage compartment of the jet copter and were about to take off, when Videl realized that they were running low on fuel, not enough to make the long trip back. We might have a problem, she said. What's the matter, dear? Asked Chi-Chi. Well, we've got fuel but it won't be enough to get all the way back home, explained Videl. What about you, Arasa? Didn't you arrive today in a jet copter? Asked Chi-Chi. Yeah, but I left mine with Sherpner back at your home, said Arasa, cursing herself for leaving it. Okay, well, I have an idea, do we have enough to get to Capsule Corp? Asked Chi-Chi. Yeah, we've got plenty for that, why? Asked Videl. Trust me, I know some people, said Chi-Chi. Alright, I guess we're heading to Capsule Corp then, said Videl. She motioned the jet copter into the air and headed in the direction for Capsule Corp. Videl had wondered who it was that Chi-Chi knew there. Surely it couldn't be the Bulma Briefs. No, it was likely somebody in upper management, maybe an executive at best, or it could even just be a lab assistant, she had no idea really. All she could do was fly there and see what happens. Meanwhile, back outside the Sun household, the guys had managed to finally get a foundation for the house, however, it took some time to get going. This was due to Hercules' plans for the house, changing on a whim every so often. Eventually, after a lengthy discussion, the men had managed to hash out exactly what was needed in the house, as opposed to what Hercule wanted in the house. They settled on a living room or front room of sorts, a kitchen, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. With the space that the home could afford, after they had overestimated the size of the foundation required, it was decided that the home could have 2 en-suite bathrooms in each bedroom and a walk-in closet for each bedroom as well. This still left an unclaimed space in the downstairs area, which Hercule said he would find some sort of use for it at a later time. Since a lot of the time was taken up with discussions about what to do with the space, only the huge holes for the logs had been started and not much else had been done. The holes themselves were not very deep either, mainly due to the limitations of Hercule and Sherpner, otherwise Gohan would have had the job done a lot quicker. Instead, they decided to get the wood required, so they headed off to the edge of the forest away from where the homes would be and picked out a few trees that they would be using for the build. Godin picked out a tree which Gohan approved of. Sherpner and Hercule both picked out mighty trees as well. However, they only had one axe between them, so they picked one of the trees and began taking swings at it. A few more hours had passed and they had eventually managed to fell the tree and had begun to chop it into the pieces that they required. Soon after they had begun to dissect it, they had decided that it was probably a good time to call it quits for the day, well, at least for dinner. It wouldn't be long until the girls were due to arrive back, so they headed back to the house, where upon arriving, Gohan started preparing food for dinner, whilst Godin, Sherpner and Hercule sat in the front room watching TV, waiting for the girls to arrive home. The jet copter carrying Videl, Chi-Chi and Arasa, arrived just outside the grounds of Capsule Corp. The three ladies disembarked the vehicle and Videl capsulized it, and they made their way to the front door, where they entered the building and walked into the rather large reception area, of which there was a lady sat behind a desk opposite the front door. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Yes, can we speak to Bulma please?" "Tell her it's Chi-Chi," replied Chi-Chi. "Just a moment please," said the young lady as she made a phone call. "Bulma, you mean as in the Bulma briefs," said a startled Arasa. "Yeah, that's the one," replied Chi-Chi. "How do you know her?" asked a puzzled Videl. "Me and my husband have known her since we were young, although I did lose touch for a number of years," replied Chi-Chi. No sooner than Chi-Chi had explained how she knew Bulma, did the woman herself appear. "Hey Chi-Chi, what brings you around here?" asked Bulma. "Oh, nothing much, just wondering if you could do us a favor," said Chi-Chi. "Us? Who's us?" asked Bulma. "Oh, right, let me introduce you, this is Videl and Arasa, they're Gohan's friends from school," explained Chi-Chi. "Oh, a pleasure to meet you both," said Bulma. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Briefs," said an astonished Arasa. "It's nice to meet you too, Mrs. Briefs," said a flustered Videl. "Please girls, call me Bulma." "Now Chi-Chi, what did you need from me?" asked Bulma. "Well, I'm sure you've heard and seen the news about Mr. Satan," asked Chi-Chi. "Yeah, of course I have," replied Bulma. "Well, Videl here is Mr. Satan's daughter, and they happened to be passing by our neck of the woods when me and Godin found them in a bad spot. I've taken them in for now, but we're planning on building them a home near to ours, so whilst the men are doing the work, we decided to go shopping," explained Chi-Chi. "That sounds great, but that doesn't answer my question, Chi-Chi," said Bulma. "Well, we took Videl's jet copter here, but I'm afraid she won't have enough fuel to get us back home. Do you think you could help us?" asked Chi-Chi. "Really? That's it. No problem. In fact, perhaps you could do me a favor while you're at it," said Bulma. "And what's that?" asked Chi-Chi. "Well, we've got a new model that needs testing and it's already fueled up. We just haven't arranged for a test run yet, so if you'd like, you can take it out for a test run," offered Bulma. "Really?" Videl said, wide-eyed at the prospect of getting a new model of jet to fly at the request of none other than Bulma Briefs herself. "Sure, if you give me yours, I'll get it fueled back up and even throw in a free service. All you have to do is bring it back tomorrow and tell me if there's anything wrong with it," said Bulma. "Yeah, sure, hee, said a giddy Videl. "Great. Whilst you're here, Chi-Chi, I was going to have a dinner party at the end of the week with all of our friends. Thought I'd tell you now so I don't forget later," said Bulma. "That sounds great, Bulma," smiled Chi-Chi. "Oh, and Videl, you and your father, and Arasa are also invited if you would like to come too," said Bulma. "Really? Gosh, I mean, if it's a party for your friends, I don't think was all Videl could say before she was cut off by a hyper-excited Arasa. "Yes, absolutely. I mean, thank you, we are most grateful," said Arasa, calming down slightly. "No problem. Do you want a tour of the place whilst you're here?" asked Bulma. I'm afraid not, Bulma. We've left the boys alone too long. Goodness knows what they've done whilst we've been gone, said Chi-Chi, much to Videl and Aras's disappointment. However, when we come back for that dinner party, I'm sure the girls can get a tour then, can't they, Bulma? Said Chi-Chi. Absolutely, replied Bulma. Awesome, said both girls at the same time. Wait right here and I'll get that jet for you, said Bulma, as she went to fetch the latest model jet from the lab. The three ladies sat about in the reception area for about 5 minutes until Bulma returned with a capsule. People and society. Here you go, she said. Thanks, replied Videl. Videl then handed over the capsule with her jet copter in it before they all said their goodbyes and the three ladies made their way outside. Once outside, they headed back to where they had touched down in the first place and Videl threw the capsule onto the ground. There stood a brand new, top-of-the-line jet copter. It had space for 4 passengers and about the same amount of luggage space as Videl's had. However, it was a sleeker design and the color palette was made up primarily of white for the main body, with purple and red trim on some of the fins and the nose piece of the jet. Videl loved it and couldn't wait to jump right in. They packed all their shopping into it and hopped in, with Videl eager to get going. However, she remembered to keep calm and do all the pre-flight checks a responsible pilot would do. After being satisfied with everything, she motioned the jet into the sky and took off in the direction of Mount Paozu. She got it cruising along at a speed that just about matched the top speed of her own jet copter, and yet, she felt it had much more to give, but she wasn't going to test that out right now, not with her passengers on board at least, so they steadily made their way home and Videl kept her eagerness in check for the trip home. Gohan, Goten, Hercule and Sherpner were sitting at the kitchen table eating the food that Gohan had made for them as the girls had not yet returned home. I wonder what's taking them so long? Gohan asked aloud. Have you never been shopping with women before, Gohan? They could spend days shopping and not come home if it were physically possible, said Sherpner. The boy's right, I don't see the appeal in it myself, agreed Hercule. Never mind that, what I wanna know is how you ended up learning to cook so well. This is good stuff, said Sherpner. Thanks, my mom taught me to cook over the years, but I also did some survival training when I was younger, said Gohan, hesitant at how to describe being left in the middle of nowhere to survive on your own. Really? Wow, I wouldn't have pegged you for surviving out in the woods, replied Sherpner. Well, it wasn't exactly voluntary, replied Gohan with a cheeky grin on his face. Anyway, looking at our progress out there today, boys, I think it's gonna take a while to get this finished. Say, Gohan, do you think your mom will let us stay until it's finished? Asked Hercule. I'm sure she will, but you might wanna ask her about that just to be safe, replied Gohan. Sure, no problem, said Hercule. Hey, I have an idea, why don't you just ask the dragon? Piped up Goten. Gohan looked at Goten with wide eyes, unable to grasp what his younger brother had just said. Ask the dragon. What are you talking about? Asked Sherpner. Goten looked at Gohan and realized that his expression had changed from puzzled to scathing. Well, his eyes told it all anyway. Gohan then decided to reply for him. Haha, he's just kidding, the dragon is just a nickname that we give to someone we know who knows how to get things done, replied Gohan. This fella sure sounds like he could help, said Hercule. Yeah, true, but unfortunately, he only ever comes around once a year, so he won't be available to help us for some time yet, said Gohan. Ah, that's too bad, it was a nice thought though, replied Hercule. Gohan, thankful for the impressively poor lie he just told, made a mental note to scold Goten later. However, he chose to not tell their mom as she might blow the whole thing out of proportion. The four of them continued eating their food until it had all gone. Gohan cleaned up and asked Goten to help him wash and dry the dishes, allowing Sherpner and Hercule to relax and watch some TV in the front room. Nice one, Godin. You can't just say things like that, you've gotta think about who's in the room, said Gohan in a low voice to his younger sibling. I'm sorry, Gohan, I just thought that maybe Shenron could help, replied Godin. True, he could, but we don't want to waste a wish on helping them build a house, we might need that wish for something else, explained Gohan. Okay, I understand, said Godin. But thanks for trying anyway, Godin, smiled Gohan. As their conversation was just finishing, they could hear the sound of a jet copter touching down outside. The two boys peered out the kitchen window to see this big, white, shiny-looking jet, landing just outside their home. They didn't recognize it and were curious to see who was inside, until they opened up and they could see Videl, Chi-Chi and Arasa climbing out. Gohan went to go outside and let Sherpner and Hercule know that they had returned. Hey, they're back and it looks like they've got a lot of shopping with them, said Gohan, making his way towards the front door. Sherpner and Hercule got up and followed him outside. Hey, welcome home, shouted Gohan to the ladies as he stepped outside. Hi sweetie, could you give us a hand over here, shouted back Chi-Chi. Okay, sure thing mom, he replied. The three men each went over to help the ladies with their shopping. Hercule helped Chi-Chi with her bags, although there weren't that many, and Sherpner helped Arasa, although she only had 2 and he was made to carry both. Gohan offered to help Videl as she had the most bags and he took 4 bags from her, leaving Videl with only 1 left. Hey, you want me to take that one as well for you, Videl? Don't worry, they're not all that heavy, said Gohan. And no, it's okay, I've got this one, said Videl with a look of embarrassment. Oh, okay, that's fine, replied Gohan. Videl wasn't about to let Gohan take the bag with the underwear she had bought in it. It's not that the underwear was anything special, it was just a private matter for her and her alone, so she kept that bag for herself. Eventually, they all ended up inside the home and the bags were either unpacked, put away in a room, in Videl's case, or left at the door, in Arasa's case. Chi-Chi was about to start making dinner when Gohan had informed her that they had already eaten as they were expected back earlier and offered to make them some as well. Chi-Chi was happy that her son offered to make food for them, it wasn't often that he did, so she took him up on the offer and made some tea for herself, Hercule, Videl and Arasa. Sherpner was content with some orange juice and Gohan and Godin were happy to have the same. Whilst Gohan made more food, the rest of the group chatted among themselves in the front room, discussing what they had gotten up to that day. Hercule and Sherpner tried to be show-offs, explaining their ideas for the new home and the tree they brought down, as well as the big holes that they had dug so far. Arasa told them about their shopping adventures, which wasn't anything special to the guys as they weren't keen shoppers of course, but the trip to Capsule Corp caught their attention, not to mention that they got to meet Bulma briefs. Hercule and Sherpner couldn't believe it until Chi-Chi explained not only how they knew Bulma, but that they were on such friendly terms, that they could practically go over any time they wanted. Hercule and Sherpner were in awe and hoped that maybe one day they'd get the chance to be introduced to her, even just to have a short conversation with her, seeing as she was not only the richest woman in the world, but also a genius too. Time passed on and it was getting late into the evening, where Arasa and Sherpner had to head home before it got too dark to fly. They said their goodbyes and promised to come back and visit again, hopefully to a new house, before hopping into Arasa's jet copter and flying back to Orange Star City. They had successfully changed the name that day, unbeknown to Arasa and Sherpner until they had returned. Well, I think I'm going to go to bed, I'm tired, said Gohan. I know what you mean, I'm beat. I think I'll turn in too, said Videl. Godin, you get cleaned up then head to bed too, okay? Said Chi-Chi, addressing her youngest. Okay mom, replied Godin. As the kids went to bed, Hercule got his fold-out bed arranged in the front room before approaching Chi-Chi to ask a question. Say, Chi-Chi, can I ask you something? said Hercule. Sure, what is it? She replied. Well, you've been awfully good to us, me and Videl, and we don't want to outstay our welcome here, but, how long can we stay here for, if you don't mind me asking? He said. Well, as long as you're building a home, then I'm sure we can accommodate. However, if you change your mind and no longer want to build a home out here, then we might need to reconsider. Sound fair? She asked. More than fair, thank you, Chi-Chi, he replied. Good, I'm glad that's settled. Well, I'm going to bed. Good night, Hercule, she said. Good night, Chi-Chi, he replied. Soon, the whole house was asleep, all except for Videl. Whilst she was tired from the day, her mind was still quite awake, troubling her in fact as she couldn't shake some weird feeling, a feeling of guilt.